Every life tells a story. Join Frank Julian as he shares his one chapter at a time from Story of a Soul 2, releasing every Wednesday.
The Story of a Soul 2 by Frank Julian with Sean O'Neill, narrated by Frank Julian. Chapter 21, Miracles and Maturity. That high school friend's dad accompanied me to make a visit to the inner city of Detroit. We would get referrals from the 700 Club. We had taken groups down to the Detroit 700 Club office to help with the telephones. In turn, they would send me names of people in need that they had received from the phone bank. Harry was one of those names. We went to see Harry in a run-down hotel, but I knew we were supposed to be there. We prayed with Harry and were able to take him to a church convention where he was helped. Harry would become part of my life until he died 20 years later. He would call me and I would minister to him. He stayed in my aunt's basement and would come to church. He later moved out when he got a job as a janitor of a church. He became part of their community. In one year, he even played Santa. He rented an apartment near the church. They threw him a shower to furnish it, and it gave me great joy to see the Lord provide for him. The friend's father who visited Harry with me became a committed member of the church. He made tapes of the services. However, he became ill with cancer. We prayed for him, but his condition worsened. It was beautiful to see God work in his family. I ended up doing his funeral, and it was beautiful. He had lived a rough life, but had truly come to Christ. I believe that he is with the Lord in heaven, and that his life was a miracle of salvation. Real ministry was taking place to help youth in their fight against drugs and others wounded by family situations that only God could help with. One thing I have come to realize in hindsight is that God knew how much I could handle, and he only gave me that. I wanted the ministry to grow. He wanted me to grow. I thank him now, but then I felt frustrated, and when the news came to me that the church was being sold, I was okay with it. It meant that we had to move. We had the final prayer meeting, and it was full of everyone who had come over the years. The prophetic word came that I was being promoted, but I couldn't see it. We were formally acknowledged as a church by the IRS, but the ordination by a group that no longer existed seemed hollow to me. I told the Lord that I tried and failed. From that point onward, I would just take my family to church and be a good Christian. The pastoral ministry, I thought, was a closed door. We were invited to visit Faith Christian Assembly by Stella, who was my aunt's sister-in-law, and she went there regularly. Nick from the church visited and told me that he thought I would like it. So we went. The strangest thing happened to me when I opened the door during that first visit, which was on the second Sunday in August 1990. I heard in my spirit, Angela will marry from the church. She was only 9 years old at the time. I thought, well, I'll test that. She surely was married out of the church in 2003 to Dustin. I couldn't have been happier with her selection of a husband. I had been praying for him before I ever knew him. After a few months at the church, we had settled in. It was an Italian Pentecostal church. I didn't know that such a thing existed, and of course, I fit right in. It was part of the Christian Church of North America. 4 months later, I got my license to preach from there and became one of the associate ministers at the church. Pastor Basio, the senior pastor, was warm and inviting when he asked me to be part of his staff. I thought that I was just going to attend church there, but it turned out that God had other plans. I was in the ministry again. His plan for my life continued to unfold, even when I thought I was done. I began to preach there about once a month and became a close friend of his son, Pat, and his wife, Robin. Our children became close to their children. We were like family. We vacationed together. We worked together in the ministry. I had no idea what lay ahead. First of all, I found myself in church school. I had a solid theological understanding, but was being mentored in church operations. Everything was above board. And I learned the proper way to manage the finances of the church and the art of visitation, pastoring through calls, physical visits, and cards. I attended district and national denominational conventions. I began to network with other pastors. Things changed in me as my father became very ill with esophageal cancer. Everyone prayed and visited him. My family felt the love of the church. I had never dealt with grief before, and as I did deal with it throughout the situation, I grew weaker physically and spiritually. I prayed and went to work and church, but it was draining my inner resources. I did the eulogy at the funeral, But then everyone left, and I felt drained and alone. I couldn't sleep. I was a case manager for Henry Ford Wyandotte Hospital, but I could not emotionally deal with it.
Thank you for listening. Join Frank Julian every Wednesday for a new chapter of Story of a Soul 2. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.